Nepotism is not just a Hollywood problem, it's everywhere. Every few months, the internet discovers nepotism in Hollywood like it's breaking news. Oh, can you believe that actor is the son of a director? Oh, she only got that role because her mom is a producer. And yeah, it's true, nepotism exists, and sometimes it's unfair. But can we stop pretending that nepotism only exists in Hollywood? Because let's be honest, nepotism is literally everywhere. And it's not just in the glitzy red carpet, it's in our job markets, it's in our local coffee shops, it's in the office down the street, it's in classrooms, hospitals, retail, and even the charity sector. And when regular people use their connections to land a job, nobody bats an eye. In fact, it's even encouraged. The word nepotism comes from the Latin nepos, meaning nephew. It was first used to criticize the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. Popes were supposed to remain celibate, but they still wanted to pass down the wealth and the power, so they appointed their nephews to powerful positions in the church. These, of course, were often illegitimate sons. Pope Sixtus IV appointed several relatives as cardinals. Pope Alexander VI went even further, giving his son, Cesare Borgia, a cardinal's hat at only 18 years old. These weren't symbolic titles. Cardinals had real political power, overseeing land, money, decisions that shaped entire nations. So yeah, before red carpets and Hollywood walk-ins, nepotism wore robes and spoke in Latin. And this wasn't unique to Europe either. In Imperial China, the civil service exam was designed to reward merit, not bloodlines. But by the Qing dynasty, elite families gamed the system. They hired private tutors, passed down cheat sheets, and in some cases bought government ranks outright through a system known as donated offices. Even in a supposedly merit-based system, nepotism evolved to survive, quietly rewarding lineage while preaching fairness. And I'm speaking from this topic not from a position of defending nepotism in Hollywood or in the real world, but I'm not going to be a hypocrite and sit here and lie and roll my eyes just because other people got a chance that I didn't get because I don't have any connections in Hollywood or in the real world. Because the truth is, personally, I never had connections in my life. I'm a first-generation university student up to doctoral level, and everything that I have gotten in life was because I hustled, and it was because of hard work and a scholarship to pay my university. If I hadn't gotten that, I would have never been able to even go to university. So everything I have achieved has been on my own. No friends boosting me, no family members helping, no connections sharing my resume or portfolio. But here's the thing, if I had the chance to enjoy nepotism or a job connection, I would take it, and I would be lying if I said I wouldn't. So yeah, I'll admit it, I'm jealous, but it's also why I'm talking about this, because I think a lot of people are speaking about this not out of frustration or because they're so shocked and they think nepotism shouldn't exist, but because they're jealous too, they're just too afraid to admit it. I think that there's this ridiculous hypocrisy where people will just cry nepotism because it's in Hollywood, but they have no problem accepting handouts in real life, so what's the difference? Hollywood is in the spotlight and the handouts are not? And what frustrates me most is the way people flaunt connections and even say that you cannot get a job nowadays if you don't have connections. Well, how is nepotism flaunted in the real world, but suddenly it's so criminalized in Hollywood? Somehow, in Hollywood, there's a problem, but in the real world, it's totally fine. And there are so many ways that we normalize nepotism in everyday life. Things like, it's all about who you know, you should network more, make connections, that's how you get hired. Or, are you even trying to talk to people? You need to make connections to get a job. So society doesn't just accept this, they expect it. Job applications are pretty much useless these days because a job application is pretty much the same as saying, who can vouch for you? There are so many applications that I have attempted to fill in, and then I get to the reference part and there is 3 slots there where I have to put 3 people. 3 connections, and I don't have them, so I'm not going to get the job. Why are we not talking about that? Why is that not a problem? Employers love picking a mediocre candidate with a glowing reference over someone who actually has qualifications, but we're not going to talk about that. Suddenly, that's okay. Seriously, take a look at your local coffee shop or your mom and pop's restaurant, universities, supermarkets. You know that person who got hired right away? Yeah, maybe they got hired so fast because their aunt runs the place or their buddy knew about the job opening before the job posting was even posted. Not because they were the most qualified, experienced, or deserving of that opportunity, but because they had someone that was in the right place in the right time. And no one bats an eye on that. No one cries injustice. We just call it working the system. But when a celebrity's daughter lands a role in a movie, that's when people suddenly decide to care about meritocracy. Legacy admissions are the Ivy League's quiet pipeline. At Harvard, legacy applicants are accepted at around 30 to 40% compared to under 5% for the rest. These policies date back to the early 20th century and were designed explicitly to maintain elite white Protestant control as universities diversified. And this system is not unique to America. In South Korea, admissions to Sky universities, Seoul National Korea University, and Yonsei is often influenced by early private prep, family strategy, and insider knowledge, all privileges passed down genetically. In India, seats in top universities are influenced by coaching access, legacy status, and subtle caste preferences. And in Nigeria, federal jobs and admissions sometimes prioritize regional or ethnic quotas, not just individual performance. Merit exists, but is often rerouted through inherited advantage. Let's get real about the job market. We are experiencing a very long and silent unemployment crisis that sees no age, no experience level, and frankly, no class. And no, it's not just a millennial thing, it's across the board. People are applying to hundreds of jobs, hearing nothing but silence in return, and scraping by with side gigs or unpaid experiencing, with the hopes that one day they're going to land something. And then other people say that there's still people getting hired. Yes, and people are getting hired from everything from barista to teacher to receptionist or even cleaning staff. And very often, not because they're the best, but because someone made a phone call for them. And in this job market, can you really blame them? It's not really about luxury, it's about survival. Desperation has become the norm, and yet no one is questioning the jobs that are being handed out and passed around like they're family heirlooms. The British East India Company, founded in the 1600s, was more than a trading body. It was a corporate empire with its own army, currency, and colonial rule, and it ran like a family business. High-ranking positions in the company were regularly given to the sons and nephews of elite British families. Experience wasn't necessary, bloodlines were. These men governed regions, controlled taxes, and held vast power in India, often with little understanding of the land or the people they ruled. The company grew rich, the empire expanded, and generations of British families built their wealth off that network, while millions in India lived under exploitation, famine, and political chaos. But this wasn't just a British habit. In the Mughal Empire, power was also distributed within tightly controlled dynastic lines. Emperors like Akbar appointed sons and cousins as provincial governors, generals, and advisors. But unlike Europe's passive succession, Mughal nepotism often turned violent. Rival sons waged war to claim the throne. Entire courts were split by blood relatives. Family loyalty mattered until it didn't. And bloodlines meant power, even if it meant spilling it. So let's be real, the only reason that we see nepotism in Hollywood is because it's public. Famous last names, film credits, interviews, social media histories, it's all searchable. It's all under the limelight. We can trace nearly every connection. If your parent was in the spotlight, your career path is basically archived online, from childhood cameos to full-blown stardom. But imagine if we had that level of transparency with regular people. You know, if you could look up how every bank teller, office manager, receptionist, barista got their job, you'd probably find the same thing. Most people got hired because someone tipped them off, vouched for them, or made a phone call behind the scenes. Even in global companies or trendy cafes, that job, right place, right time story, sometimes it's not about talent, it's about timing and who gave them the heads up that a position would become available before it became publicly available. And if we thought about it and realized how it applies to everyday life, we would realize that nepotism is really just a word for networking with power. And sometimes calling it out online isn't really about seeking justice, it's just about envy, not of talent, but of visibility. And most people aren't really upset that someone used their connections. What bothers us is that famous people's connections come with money, fame, and lifestyle perks, while our connections only get us easier job opportunities, quicker promotions, and a smoother path to stability. In Europe, monarchies were built on one rule: inheritance is everything. Charles II of Spain, born in 1661, was the product of so many cousin marriages that he was born physically and mentally disabled. His jaw was so malformed that he couldn't chew food properly. This wasn't accidental, it was intentional inbreeding. Part of the Habsburg dynasty's plan to keep power consolidated. Later, Queen Victoria became known as the grandmother of Europe because her children married into nearly every major European royal family. Strategically, of course. It was political matchmaking on a continental scale. And it didn't just happen in the West. In the Ottoman Empire, sultans appointed their sons to govern territories as a kind of royal internship. But once a new sultan took power, it became standard to execute his brothers. A policy formally legalized by Mehmed II in the 15th century to prevent future claims to the throne. And in ancient Egypt, nepotism was divine. Pharaohs were considered gods, and their children inherited the throne as a sacred right. Tutankhamun became king at 9 years old. High priests also passed down their titles, keeping both religious and political power in the family. Across empires and religions, one thing remained constant: birthright was treated as destiny. And the middle class also has its hidden privileges, because not all nepotism looks the same. Sometimes it's a Hollywood producer's kid, sometimes it's a working class kid with an uncle who owns a pub, but more often than not, it's middle class gatekeeping dressed up as polish or professionalism. It's the unpaid internships that you could afford because your parents could pay your rent. It's that LinkedIn profile that you learned to perfectly craft because your mom worked in HR. It's the way you just happen to know how to nail an interview, how to shake hands like a pro, or how to dress the part, or even afford the clothes to dress the part. And people love talking about pulling yourself by the bootstraps, but no one talks about the people that are born with the boots, the laces, the polish, and someone trying to tie them up for you. And that's nepotism too. It's just coded. Quieter, easier to defend, and much harder to see if you are inside of it. Caravaggio is remembered for revolutionizing Baroque painting with raw emotion and dramatic lighting, but his rise wasn't purely from the streets. Though he struggled early on, Caravaggio found patronage from powerful figures, including Cardinal del Monte, who gave him a place to live, commissions, and connections to Rome's elite. That support wasn't just charity, it was access. Caravaggio was a genius, but like many before and after him, he needed someone in power to notice and bankroll his brilliance. In the 20th century, many industries in the UK and in the US operated more like inherited clubs than open job markets. Law firms, newsrooms, and civil service, if your father was a partner or your uncle ran the paper, your career was already halfway arranged. Historically, a large percentage of top civil service positions in the UK were held by graduates of only two universities, Oxford and Cambridge. particularly through the 19th and early 20th centuries. These institutions often favored students with social pedigree or family history. In the US, legacy admissions at elite universities were formalized in the 1920s to preserve WASP dominance as more Jewish and working class students started qualifying on merit. But this kind of gatekeeping is not exclusive to the West. In modern-day India, caste continues to shape access to education, employment, and social mobility, even though it's officially illegal. Many top politicians, actors, and academics still come from upper caste groups. And while Dalits and other marginalized castes have made massive strides, they still face informal exclusion, especially in elite professions. And in the Gulf states, like Saudi Arabia, tribal identity and national lineage play a quiet but powerful role. Even among Muslims, there can be deep social boundaries, not based on belief, but on ethnicity and origin. African Muslims and South Asian workers, for example, may be practicing the same faith, but are often seen differently in social hierarchies. This isn't always about prejudice in a Western sense. Sometimes it's about preserving social structure and cultural cohesion in a rapidly globalizing society. Multiculturalism isn't always embraced as a goal, especially in places where identity and tradition take precedent. And to be honest, I don't think that Hollywood nepotism is always the villain. In fact, I would argue and say that Hollywood nepotism is more understandable than your everyday life nepotism. There are some actually valid reasons for nepotism in Hollywood, and these reasons don't apply in the same way that they do for us regular people looking for regular jobs. For example, if you're a world-famous actor or singer, your family doesn't really have the option of living anonymously. Your kids are in the public eye whether they want to be or not, so it makes sense for them to enter these industries where visibility is useful rather than being a constant liability. For example, would it really be safer or more private for a celebrity child to work as a cashier? Probably not. Hollywood is often seen as the safest place to work because they're surrounded by people who understand the pressure, the fame, and the risk. So it's not always about luxury. Sometimes it's about safety, legacy, and keeping things in a family for practical reasons as well. And in a way, it's no different from a family of lawyers, bakers, or surgeons, a place where skills, reputation, and trust are passed down, just more visibly. But here's what's different. In Hollywood, there's at least some pressure to perform, because if the child of a famous actor bombs in a film, the whole world will know and call it out. But in everyday jobs, most people coast comfortably thanks to the same nepotistic safety net. They're just not judged for it. So what are people really mad about? I think I should just say it. I think people are not mad about nepotism. I think people are mad about class. They're mad that some people get to fail upwards, that some people are born with plan Bs, Cs, and golden parachutes, and that their connections are more powerful than their talent. And yeah, we should be mad about that, but let's stop pretending that nepotism is a Hollywood problem, because really it's a system problem, and it's something that reflects more in everyday life than in Hollywood, because Hollywood has the film industry, the music industry, but what about the other little industries that take up all the careers of everyday life? We should be mad about nepotism there too. But let's stop pretending that this is a Hollywood problem, because really it's a system problem. A system where connections are currency, where visibility equals opportunity, where merit is optional, but social capital is everything. And sometimes, even we benefit from it, whether we realize it or not. Let's call it what it is. So next time that someone loses their mind over nepo babies in Hollywood, ask yourself, are we mad at the system or just the people who benefit most visibly from it? Because Nepotism didn't start in Hollywood. It started everywhere else, and it's not just a Hollywood problem, it is the entire system, rigged and hiding in plain sight in our everyday life, everywhere we go. We just can't see it because it's not famous enough, and because really we can't look up how somebody got their job as easily as we can look up how somebody most likely got their role as an actor. And essentially, we are stuck in this rat race, working harder but getting nowhere, while others just coast along with privilege, connection, and family ties in the real world too. And deep down, the problem isn't nepotism itself. It's when people get handed opportunities they haven't earned and aren't equipped to handle. Because yes, there is such a thing as nepotism with competence. And there's definitely nepotism without it. So let's stop pretending that we're not part of it. And let's stop judging people for using the same strategy that we use or that we wish we had the opportunity to use. Instead, we should be focusing on the real problem. A job market that is collapsing, a culture that rewards who you know instead of what you know, where some people inherit doors while the rest of us have to knock, beg, or build our own doors. And even then, not have it guaranteed at all. Hollywood just made this problem easier to see. Some people inherit doors and others build them from scratch. And the problem isn't that someone got help, it's that too many people who have earned a place never get the chance because they weren't born in the right family, they didn't go to the right school, or didn't have someone to whisper their name in a meeting. So maybe the goal isn't to cancel nepo babies. Maybe it's to create a world where connections, competence can coexist, and where hard work doesn't keep getting drowned out by legacy. Let's at least admit that the system was rigged, and start demanding a system where talent doesn't finish last. Thank you for sticking with me through this video. It means so much to me. I hope that you learned something new. While I was doing research for this video, I certainly did, and I hope you did too. And if anything resonated with you or even challenged your thinking a little bit, I would love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. And if you didn't like it, but you watched until now, well, thank you also to you for being here. And take care. I will see you on the next one. Bye.